The morning air was cool and quiet in Newton, a wealthy neighborhood where tall old trees lined the peaceful streets. A soft mist hung in the air, drifting in from the Charles River. Inside a large Georgian-style house on Maple Street, Elizabeth Wilson was in the kitchen making breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of bacon sizzling on the pan filled the house with warmth. The wooden floor creaked gently as her husband Michael walked in. He came up behind her and kissed her shoulder gently. Dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, he looked like the perfect gentleman, the kind of man you'd expect to see in a Wall Street office. "Heading out early today?" he asked, his voice calm and sweet. "Yes," Elizabeth smiled. "I'm closing on a big property in Brooklyn today. Historic place. It's a $35 million deal." Michael smiled back. "Of course, that's what Boston's best real estate agent does." He looked proud, but Elizabeth didn't see the hidden meaning in his eyes. The shine on his expensive watch caught the morning sun. She had no idea what he was really planning. Later, Elizabeth drove her sleek black Jaguar along the river, heading toward the care center where her father lived. Her mind wandered to him, the strong man who had once run one of the top construction companies in the city. Now, 3 years after his stroke, he lived quietly in a hospital suite. He could no longer speak, but his eyes still showed emotion when she spoke to him. When she arrived at Champ's Care Center, a kind nurse named Jennifer greeted her. Elizabeth took the elevator to the top floor and stepped into the quiet room where her father sat by the window. "Hi Dad, I'm here," she said softly, taking his hand. She told him about her work, about the deal she was closing, and how her mother was doing. He couldn't reply, but he seemed to listen carefully, his fingers slightly tightening around hers. But something strange had started happening with her younger sister Caroline, a bright nurse in Brooklyn. Caroline suddenly quit her job without a clear reason. She said she needed more time for herself. Soon after, she started coming to Elizabeth's house more often, always wearing fancy designer clothes and carrying new luxury bags. Her visits seemed to line up with Michael's days working from home. "I'm learning to invest," she told Elizabeth one day. "Michael's been teaching me." There was something different in Caroline's eyes. Elizabeth noticed it but brushed it off. Maybe it was just stress, she thought. But behind the scenes, something terrible was unfolding. One summer evening, Elizabeth came home after a celebration dinner for her big sale. The house was strangely empty. Michael wasn't home. Caroline wasn't answering her phone. Feeling uneasy, Elizabeth went to visit her father, only to find her mother there, pale and shaking. $20 million had been stolen from her father's safe. At the same time, Michael and Caroline had vanished. They left behind a shocking $5 million debt on Elizabeth's credit card. Everything fell apart. Neighbors stared with pity. Whispers followed her at the country club. The divorce was finalized just 3 months later. Elizabeth had no choice but to sign the papers in the cold halls of the court. Michael had already quit his job and moved the money to overseas accounts. He left her with nothing but a mountain of bills and her father's medical expenses. Her mother tried to comfort her. "We can earn money again," she said. But Elizabeth was broken. Her husband and her own sister had betrayed her. The pain went deep. To pay off the debt, she sold the Newton mansion. She bought a small condo 10 minutes from her father's care center. It was nice, but a far cry from the $6 million home she had before. Through her window, she could still see the Charles River, but her old life felt like a dream now. There was no time to cry. Her father's care cost $220,000 every month. Insurance helped a little, but not much. Elizabeth threw herself into work. She woke up at 5, showed homes until 9 at night, answered calls even on holidays. She refused to lose another deal. "Elizabeth, you're working too hard," her mother warned, but Elizabeth pushed through. Deep inside, she wanted to show them, Michael and Caroline, that she was stronger than they thought. 2 years later, she found something on Instagram that broke her heart. Caroline and Michael were in a royal suite at a luxury hotel, drinking $50,000 champagne. They posted photos from a yacht party in Monaco, shopping in Paris and Milan, partying in Miami. They were living off the stolen $20 million. "Why don't you report them?" her friend Jane asked. "They could be arrested." But Elizabeth stayed silent. Her father's sad eyes told her he might already know something. She couldn't bring herself to act, not yet. Years passed. Elizabeth rebuilt her career. She became one of the top luxury real estate agents in Boston, closing over $100 million in deals a year. She bought a luxury apartment in Back Bay and a new Mercedes. But while she rose, her sister's life began to fall apart. Caroline stopped posting glamorous pictures. The shine was gone. Someone said they saw Michael pawning watches and designer bags. He wore cheap shirts now and looked tired. Rumors flew. Michael had tried to cheat an Arab investor and failed. Caroline spent her days gambling. They were running out of money. Their last photo online showed them in a cheap hotel in Morocco, looking exhausted and afraid. Then, 10 years after the betrayal, Elizabeth got a call from the care center. "Your father is not doing well, please come quickly." She rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Her father passed peacefully in his sleep. While she was planning his funeral, Elizabeth got an email from Caroline. The service was held at the Grand Brookline Chapel. Sunlight poured through stained glass. More than 300 people came to say goodbye to George Wilson, business leaders, professors, family friends. Elizabeth sat in the front row in a black Chanel suit. She looked strong and graceful, but her eyes burned with quiet anger. At exactly 2 p.m., the doors opened. Two people walked in who hadn't been seen in a decade. Caroline, dressed in a new Chanel suit, and Michael in another Tom Ford. They looked rich, but up close, they seemed tired and worn out. Caroline's makeup was heavy, as if to hide the sadness. Michael had gray in his hair. The room went silent. Caroline walked slowly down the aisle in loud heels. "It's been a while, dear sister," she said with a small smirk. Elizabeth's hands clenched. Her body trembled with anger. She sat up straight. "You have some nerve coming here," she said coldly. Caroline just smiled a little. "We're family too." The priest was about to begin the ceremony, but Caroline wasn't done. Her eyes moved to the photo of their father beside the flowers. "There's something I want to talk about," she said softly. "About Dad's inheritance." The room went still. All eyes were on the woman in black. "It should be divided into 3 parts," Caroline said clearly. Her voice echoed in the funeral hall. "Between the 3 of us, me, Elizabeth, and Mother." Gasps spread through the crowd like a wave. The people in suits and dark dresses looked at each other in disbelief. The lawyers sitting in the front row started flipping through their documents in panic. Some of the businesspeople whispered to each other, unsure of what they had just heard. Then, a sharp voice cut through the silence. "How dare you!" Elizabeth's words rang like thunder. Her face burned with rage. Even the large chandelier above them seemed to shake from the force of her voice. "Have you forgotten what you did 10 years ago?" she shouted. "You stole $20 million from Father's safe, and ran away." Caroline stood tall. She didn't look ashamed. Instead, she gave a small shrug, like someone brushing off a bit of dust. "That's the past," she said calmly. Her tone was cool, almost foreign, as if she had learned to speak like this during her time living in Paris. "And it wasn't me. Michael took the money. I didn't know anything about it." "Liar," Elizabeth cried, her voice breaking. Beside her, their mother, Martha, gently placed a hand on Elizabeth's arm to keep her from standing up. Her hand trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Elizabeth, calm down," she said. Her tone was soft, but carried the weight of a decade of silence. That's when Michael finally spoke. Wearing his tailored black suit and an expensive watch, he adjusted his tie and took a step forward. His voice was smooth, polished, like a man used to talking his way out of things. "Elizabeth," he began, "don't blame your wife." He said it so casually, so smugly. "Divorcing you was the smartest thing I ever did. We just weren't meant for each other, that's all." Elizabeth's heart felt like it shattered all over again. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Hot tears ran down her cheeks. 10 years of pain and betrayal came rushing back. But then, a new voice broke through the room. "Do you want to know the truth?" It was Martha. She hadn't raised her voice, but everyone heard her. Her question hung in the air like smoke. The room, filled with over 300 guests, became dead silent. Caroline's face lost all color. Michael's smile vanished. Mother," Caroline stammered, her voice now small and afraid. "That's enough," Martha said quietly. She slowly stood up. There was grace in her posture, the same kind of dignity she had carried back when she taught literature at a top Boston school. "I've kept quiet for 10 years, she said, "but not anymore." Suddenly, the chapel doors creaked open. 3 police officers walked in. They weren't loud or aggressive, but their presence shifted the energy in the room. The man in the lead was the son of their father's old friend. He walked down the aisle, past the shocked guests, and stopped in front of Michael and Caroline. Mr. Michael Thompson, Miss Caroline Wilson, he said calmly, we'd like to ask you a few questions. Caroline looked like she was about to faint. Sweat ruined her flawless makeup. Michael's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but every door was guarded. And then Martha pulled out something from her bag, a yellowed envelope. Elizabeth's eyes widened. She recognized the handwriting on the front. To be opened in 10 years. It was her father's handwriting. Everyone held their breath as Martha opened the envelope with trembling fingers. I'll tell you what really happened that day, she said, her voice heavy. 10 years ago, your father knew everything. Elizabeth felt her knees go weak. He knew Michael was trying to sell company secrets, and that Caroline was helping him, leaking information from inside. He also knew about the plan to steal $20 million in cash from the company safe. People gasped. Even the priest at the altar took a step back. Your father had proof, Martha continued. He had security camera footage, records of the safe being opened, evidence of the money being transferred overseas. It was all there. She held up the documents, papers that had waited 10 years in silence. But why didn't you say anything back then? Elizabeth asked, her voice breaking. Martha closed her eyes. Her face showed both sorrow and regret. Because your father loved Caroline, she said softly. Even after everything, he wanted to protect her. He was afraid that if she was arrested, her future would be destroyed. He made a private deal. He gave them the money, as a final gift, but he made me promise not to tell you, Elizabeth. He wanted you to live a life without anger and revenge. He hoped that someday, Caroline would change. Caroline dropped to her knees. Her expensive clothes didn't matter anymore. Father, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Martha then pulled out another paper, the will. Michael tried to move again, but 2 officers grabbed him before he could take a step. Martha read aloud, all assets will go to Elizabeth, but if Caroline shows real signs of changing and helping society, I hope Elizabeth will support her as she sees fit. Silence followed. Caroline sobbed. Her makeup was ruined. Her hands shook as she covered her face. Michael said nothing. He simply bowed his head as the officers cuffed him. This is your father's last letter, Martha said, pulling out a final piece of paper. Elizabeth took it in her hands. Her father's handwriting felt like a warm hug and a deep ache all at once. To my beloved daughters. I've thought every day about whether I made the right decision. Elizabeth, I'm proud of the strong, kind woman you've become. Caroline, even after your mistakes, I believe you can start over. You are both my daughters. My deepest hope is that one day, we can sit together as a family again. With love. Father. The detective stepped forward. Michael Thompson and Caroline Wilson, you are under arrest for embezzlement and breach of trust. Caroline didn't resist. She cried softly as the officers led her away. Michael said nothing. Elizabeth looked up at her father's photo on the altar. His kind eyes and soft smile now seemed to hold a message she hadn't seen before. I always believed in you. 3 months later, the court delivered its verdict. Michael, 7 years in prison. Caroline, 5 years. Both ordered to return the stolen $20 million. After the trial, Elizabeth visited Caroline in prison. She sat behind the glass in the visiting room, staring at her sister dressed in a plain orange uniform. The once proud woman looked small and tired. Sister, Caroline said in a broken voice, I'm so sorry. Elizabeth said nothing for a moment. Then she looked into Caroline's eyes and saw something she hadn't seen before, not arrogance, but loneliness, regret. I was jealous, Caroline whispered, of everything you had, your career, your happiness, your peace. She looked down, ashamed. I want to do better. I've started studying again. I plan to get my nurse's license back. After I'm released, I want to work in hospice care, for people like Father. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. Her father's dream, his deep hope for his daughters, had finally begun to take root. And for the first time in 10 years, she let herself believe that healing, real healing, was possible.